Okay, guys, I think we can start right now. So okay, there's also that that Q&A option if you want to ask questions and stuff. Just use it for the sake of using it. And please feel free to speak up at any point. This is a problem solving session and not exactly a lecture. So I'll be trying to guide you through the solutions instead of just stating them or something like that. Um, so yeah, we'll start with the first question. Um, just to confirm once more, everybody can hear me, right?
Yes.
Awesome.
Yes.
Awesome. So you guys can read the first question. Um,
If everyone else is fine, can you start from second?
um, you want me to start from the second question?
Yes.
Um, okay, great. Some people want to start from the first one too. So we'll just go over the first one. It's not that difficult a problem, and it's a pretty nice problem. And it's actually the only non-combinatorics problem on the sheet, mostly because I like combinatorics. Um, it's not a bad problem. It's a pretty nice problem. Yeah, so we'll start with the first one and we'll go on to the second one pretty quickly. Don't worry about that. So you can everybody, I'll give you like a minute more maybe. Just have a good idea of what the question is asking, and I'll explain the question again. Um, I've never tried a poll before, so I'm just going to try a poll for no reason. Uh, Oh yeah, guys. I actually updated the drive. Yeah, I noticed that. I noticed those two errors that I'd example 5 and example 6 were redundant, and so I replaced it. I replaced them and I sent the new drive link. You can use the old drive link too because it's just the same thing without example 5 and 6. Uh, can you guys see the poll? Okay, you need to click on the triangle. You have to click on that triangle, square, circle thingy. In any case, I'll start doing the question. I'll start doing the question right now. S- So, so what the question is saying is that okay? So you're given n plus one numbers starting from anywhere greater than 100. So maybe you can start from 110, 111. Let's just go with 100 for the just when we're writing it down. So you have 100. Uh, you have 101, and so on till 200, right? Um, so basically, you have 101 numbers, right? So basically, for in general, you go from any end. So if you start from 101, you go up till 202. So you go from n till 2n, right? Where n is greater than or equal to 100, and the exact reason for what the significance of this 100 thing is not exactly clear for now. And what they say is that you take these, in this case, you say you take these 101 numbers and you divide it into two piles, right? Of random size, right? They can be of any size, but you divide the set of numbers into two piles. And they're asking you to prove that you can find two numbers in one set, right? So in some set, you can find two numbers such that they add up to a square, right? That is the sum of these two numbers is a square number, right? So, I mean, just to be sure, is there anybody who did not understand the question? Now is the time. Like, if you didn't understand the question, please do speak up or type up. Right. Um. So, so what do we do about this? The thing is that, right. So, what do we do about this? So we're given like a bunch of numbers. In this case, say n plus one numbers, right? You're given, um, and clearly, and somewhat clearly, they're starting from n greater than or equal to 100. So it seems that maybe trying smaller cases may not work, right? At least, that's what I think. We can, I mean, actually it's pretty obvious that smaller cases don't work. I mean, if you take just the case of n equals 1, then you only have 1 and 2, right? And um there's no two numbers which add up to square. Even if you take a larger case, maybe 1 2 3 4, I mean, start from 2, go to 4. It's not necessary that the sum of, these small cases make it clear that this only happens when you have a large enough set. So we can probably keep that in mind. Now, to be honest, can you explain the last part when you said the sum of squares? Right, no, they're saying that in at least one of the sets, you should be able to pick two numbers such that their sum is a square number. Like a set have at least a sum of becomes, like you have to be able to pick two numbers which sum up to a square, right? Um, right. So now, the thing is that what is one way to guarantee something to happen, right? Like the thing is that when we're doing Olympiad problems in general, it's often very helpful but goes against intuition in the beginning, at least, to go for more specificity, right? To prove to prove a more general result, right? Instead of what they're asking, to maybe go for something a little bit looser, something less stricter. It actually goes against intuition, to relax, to sort of strengthen the result, make it stronger, and then try to prove that. um, but often it's easier to prove a stronger result than easier result. It gives you a better perspective on what's happening. So just a general word of advice: don't be afraid to do things like that. So the thing is, now I'm asking, what more you know specific thing, like, how can we generalize this problem in a sort of a specific way? Like, what condition can we add? That's a better way to put it. um such that this problem will be true, like, such that this problem will be true. And what I actually want to do, just to make my words a little bit more clear, is that I want to get rid of this condition, the two sets condition, because the two set part of the problem, because it'll simplify the problem that way. So for now, what they've given us, they've given us a bunch of numbers and we're dividing it. Oops, I'm really sorry. I didn't, the sound didn't even come for some reason. Yeah, I admitted him. Right. I'm really sorry about that. Okay, so yeah. So the thing is that they've given you a bunch of numbers. They've given you a set, And then they're saying, we divide it into two sets, and then in those two sets we should be able to find two in one of those two sets we should be able to find two numbers that they add up to a square. And the problem is trying to probably sort of confuse us by telling us that this thing, the answer is dependent sort of on the way, on how we divide the sets. I mean, it's clearly not dependent, but we might actually need, if we try to prove it exactly as this is, we want to get rid of that condition, right? Just to make myself more clear, they're saying they're dividing the set into two sets, and asking us to prove that in one of these places we should be able to find the sum of squares, right? um so but clearly, like that in the original problem, they're asking us to prove it for all n greater than 100, n greater than or equal to 100, right? What does this mean? Like, so can we try to instead of, can we get rid of this whole line, the piles line, dividing into two piles, and can we frame this the perfect square condition? Can we frame this perfect square condition on can we frame this perfect square condition only and only dependent on this original set? That's the aim, right? We're trying to simplify our problem. We're probably making it a stronger problem, but we're making it simpler. What I was thinking was, I thought, why not make all possible squares? But I don't think that adds on. So that's a nice idea, actually. That's a nice idea. That's a really nice idea. So that's a natural idea, even to think of all possible pairs that add up to a sum, right? So that is, maybe if we can sort of draw a graph. By that I mean, just put the numbers um, um, sort of, in space like that. Put one number everywhere in space, and connect two numbers if connect two numbers if they hmm, connect two numbers if they add up to a square. um you brute force till 126. Yeah, I guess it's possible to brute force. Hmm. So can somebody think of something, can somebody think of a condition to impose on the original set, a condition to impose on the original set n to n, something we can say, something to say something in the form, you can prove this instead, right? On this set only, like it doesn't involve making piles, it doesn't involve making piles, such that the condition is automatically satisfied. This condition is automatically satisfied. Can somebody think of such a thing? um it's actually not too hard, I think. um and just to give a better hint, to use this the graph thing, right? To use the graph thing, this thing, uh, to use the graph thing. uh so yeah, so to use the graph thing, what we can say is that we have a graph of n plus 1 points, where we can actually label each point with the number it represents. Maybe there's 2n somewhere, stuff like that. Mm, right, we can represent these numbers like
So
that.
is it like a triplet kind of? Is it suppose AI, AJ, and AK, such that if you take any two elements among them, they add up to a square. So we are done.
That's the idea I was actually looking for, right? That's the actually idea I was looking for. So the idea I was going for was that, what we can impose is, what if we find three elements, all of which add up to a square, like any two of which add up to a square, right? If you find three elements, any two of which add up to a square, then by a pigeonhole principle, one of these sets will have the two elements that add up to a square. Did everybody get this? This is actually the key idea. If we find three elements, oops, I didn't actually. Yeah. If we find three elements, A, B, and C, if we find three elements, A, B, and C, each of which, like A plus B is a square, B plus C is a square, and C plus A is a square. All of them form a number of the form n square. Then we're done, because by Pigeonhole, however we divide these elements into two sets, two of these numbers will come in the same ratio, right? I mean, say come in the same set. And then we're done with the problem, because that's the problem. So this is like solve the main point, right? And if we go back to the graph idea, and by graph, what I mean is we're basically going to represent each number by a point, and we're going to connect two numbers. If we're going to connect two numbers, we're going to connect two numbers by a line if their sum is a square, right? And I put, say, all the one of the sets we divided into on one side, and the other set we divided into the others on the other side. And they're asking us to prove that we can find a line between 2 points. And what I was trying to say in what was suggested was that if you find a triangle, then it is impossible to divide this into two parts, where one of the part will have two of these vertices, and hence one of the line, right? So if you guys, some of you are not comfortable with graph theory, don't worry about it. Like, this formulation is just as easy. We're trying to find three numbers such that any two of which add up to a square, then obviously the whole set itself will add up to one of the set will have two numbers that add up to a square, right? So did anybody not get this? So we want to find an odd cycle, right? You want to find an odd cycle in essence. If some of you don't know graph theory, don't worry about this, but like, it's not that complicated, but still don't worry about it. We want to find an odd cycle. Basically, you're trying to prove that the graph is not bipartite, right? And that is equal to proving that it's odd cycle, right? Like, those two are equivalent. Oh wait, you're saying the same thing? Yeah, never mind. You're saying the same thing, but in this case, we're actually trying to find three elements, we could probably find 5 elements, any two of which add up to a square, but that will become, that will sort of become longer and lamer. If 3 elements works, why are we going to look for 5 elements, right? 3 seems simpler to look at, because it works directly for the Pigeonhole. You have 3 elements and 2 sets, so one of them must have 2 elements. Can you define an odd cycle once? An odd cycle in a graph is basically a bunch of vertices, all of which are connected. They form a cycle. Like, you can go from one to the other, and in the end, you can come back to this one. And the number of vertices or the number of edges is odd. This reduces to NT. Yeah, it more or less, you can call it algebra NT. I don't know. This is more of an algebra problem, I think, but you can say it's NT. I'm not sure. We're handling integers, so probably NT. Right. So let's see. Let's actually see what the condition actually means.
I have a doubt.
Yeah.
Can you just define an odd cycle once in the graph? What it means?
Yeah. I just did that. So what I mean is that we can find, like a bunch of vertices like that, all of which are connected to each other.
Okay. Oh, I got it.
1 second, it's syncing. Yeah, like all of which are connected to each other, so that and the number of vertices is odd. Like in graph theory, that's the thing.
Yeah, I got it.
Awesome. Okay, now the thing. Okay, what we have done so far, like that was what we have done so far is we basically said that finding this works, but we need to be more specific. Like, how can we prove? How can we prove that finding three, finding three, like, we can find three numbers among the set such that any two of them add up to a square, and that's the we prove that's the problem, right? So we have reduced the problem, we have reformulated the problem from something to something. As a matter of fact, generally this is a very useful thing to do. Like, if you're stuck on an Olympiad problem and you're not able to make progress, you can sort of maybe instead of, like, if you really don't know what to do, try to reformulate the problem in terms of something else. Try to put the problems in other words instead of directly solving it. And especially in many harder problems, the questions have multiple layers, so there's almost a necessity to do this. Reformulating the problem in simpler ways and going on. You won't be able to solve the problem in a single stroke, so something like that is useful. Now, again, we have to find three numbers, right? We have to find three numbers, which add up, each of which add up to a square, right? um Abhinav, you said we can do we can do that in every topic, like in algebra and NT also. Like, I'm sorry, I didn't see it, but what exactly are you referring to?
The thing you said to reformulate the question, I guess he
Oh,
means
yeah,
that.
that applies everywhere. That applies everywhere. Right, whenever you have a question, um like, you can't, you usually, yeah, right, it's a method of thinking. That's all I'm saying. It's just a really general thing. um so again, the thing is that, we have this ABC, and we want each of these to add up to some sort of square, right? And the ABC should all be in this range from n to 2n. Now, this, you know again, it feels like we have too many degrees of freedom now, right now. At least for me, it feels that way, and it should hopefully feel that way for you too. um right, like, how do we make this, again, how do we make this problem simpler? Like, again, I want to reformulate it and make it a little bit simpler. And what I want to do is, I want to sort of make this simpler. Like, having A, B, and C, three numbers, and having to choose them gives me too much freedom. Like, if you have n equals 1,000, you have 1,000 numbers to choose, and you have 1,000 numbers, and you need to choose three of these, right? Oh, and as a matter of fact, you can actually make constructions easily right now. Making constructions right now basically end up, it's easier to make constructions right now. Like, for a specific case, take n equals 100. um it's easier to make constructions. Um like, to find three numbers such that this holds true. Wait, are you gonna? We don't actually. I'll tell you, we don't actually need an explicit construction for any number. I think, I'm not sure, but I'll leave this at some point. I'm not gonna solve every detail, but yeah. So, but we're not there yet. We just reformulated the problem, and this ABC thing is still something to handle. Like, we have three. We need to choose three numbers, and how do you do that? Um, so you know what? Let's actually try some construction type of thing. You know,
So
yeah.
I think it is better because we have somewhat like three squares, so we can take three, like at least three squares will exist. No, like we can try for base case also 100. So maybe try for three consecutive squares, like n minus one square, n square, and n plus one square. I mean k
That's
minus.
something. That's probably something we can do. So, in particular, say n equals 100, then we have numbers from 100 to 200, and right, and we want to prove that two of these sum up to, we need to find three numbers that they sum up to a square. And the idea is to be more specific about this, and like if we can't look for the general thing, search for something more specific and check if it's true. It's probably easier, and it's probably true. And at least for me, my intuition in the beginning when looking over moves like these were to not do it. My like something told me you're making this more general, and you're making this way more specific, so it's probably not true. Like, if for example, if I say that maybe we can find um maybe we can find three, you know like we can find three continuous numbers. This is not true. What I'm saying now is not true, but it might not be true, but we can find three continuous numbers such that all three of them sum up to a square. um right. So can you guys like try to look for, can you guys try to characterize three numbers, make them more specific, right, to make this happen? I mean, as somebody was already saying that, but I just want you guys to take a second and try this, if you haven't like already
I,
given it a
prob-
thought.
I probably didn't say this. I like said कि there are at least three squares between 100 and 200. So suppose 121, 144 and 169.
Hmm.
So like we can put a plus b as k minus 1 square, b plus c as k square, and c plus a as k plus 1 square. That seems like more.
Uh, Wait. So if a plus, how can a plus b be 121? I mean, the minimum possible value of a plus b is like 201, right?
No, no, no. I mean like just like three consecutive squares. Not explicitly this, but like I actually thought of three consecutive squares.
Hmm.
Like
That
maybe, okay, in this case it doesn't. Like 121 and 144 doesn't work. But like for somewhat bigger cases, it
we
would
can
work.
we can we can. I see something in what you're saying, right? So exactly. I think to phrase it in a better way, the minimum possible value of the sum is 201, right? 100 plus 101 is the minimum possible value. And the maximum possible is 399.
Yeah,
So
so between them.
the squares must be in between, and to look for something very specific, um we can probably look for the number in between. We can look at three continuous squares and try to find something general. you know um Pythagoras triplets, I really don't. No, this not this not a Pythagoras triplet. This is really not a Pythagoras triplet. Um okay, so right. No, I mean, I think he was implying this, like consider, looking at what squares can be achieved, right? Looking at what squares can be achieved. Right. I mean, that is an idea, to be honest. The value, Pythagorean triplets, that'll make it too specific, because, we have two little squares between 100 and 200, and Pythagorean triplets come really rarely. So it doesn't seem like a good fit. Hmm. I mean, guys, think for a second, write down what you said and try to think of something. Try to think of how we can write. If I hadn't phrased this clearly better, what I want you to try is writing A, B, and C explicitly. You know, like writing A, B, and C explicitly so that they sum up to a square. So right. So um, what Pranav is saying is a nice idea. So the thing is, try write as try to sort of you have three squares, You just so it's syncing. 1 second. Okay, there's something wrong. Can you tell how I can tell the answer? What do you mean? Okay, right, yeah. Something wrong. So yeah, so B plus C is 256, and I'm just writing what Pranav wrote. C plus A is 289, right? And you can solve these three equations for A, B, and C. It's three equations, three variables. Um, you can solve it. You just need to make sure that they're actually integers. Um, you just have to make sure that they're actually integers. Oh, so that's one thing. You have to actually make sure that they're integers. But this is nice. But we actually see that they will be integers. You can solve these three equations and you'll get that A, B, C are integers. Has everybody, like, I think many people might have looked up the solution. I'm trying to help people come up with the solution. Hopefully it feels like you are coming up with the solution. Right, right. I mean, it's of course it's okay if you haven't, but even if you have, if you've just seen the solution, maybe you can try to solve it now. Um, you'll find out this is actually comes to an integer. Like you'll get that A, B, C. All three are integers, if I'm not wrong. I didn't actually solve this one right now.
Oh,
And
like
in
I will just, I
yeah,
can tell you what integers they will be. B is like 128 minus 32. So like that, like I guess. Like they are integers. I solved it.
yeah, right, right, right. Thank you for the confirmation, right? So yeah, so as Pranav said, they are integers, right? And guys, please feel free to speak up more. So yeah, you get A, B, C as integers, and maybe we can try to generalize this, and in general, maybe we can actually do this. We can probably try to show that there are three continuous like that numbers A, B, and C, so that their numbers. Did I? Yeah, never mind. Yeah, so then A numbers. This is taking too much time to sync each time for some reason. Right. See, there are three numbers A, B, and C such that their sums are consecutive squares. So for anybody who couldn't keep up, so what I'm trying to say is that we were trying to show that there exist three numbers A, B, C such that the respective pairwise sums are squared numbers. But maybe it will be probably simpler to show that to try to find ABC explicitly such that their sums are consecutive integers. And in general, you find that if you put something like k square, k minus 1 square, and k plus 1 square, that is, put a plus b equals this, you know this equal this, and c plus a equals this, um you'll actually notice that I'll show you. So
Actually, your that lower right corner is been hidden by something. So what you write there isn't visible.
got
Yeah.
yeah. So yeah, so you find ABC, and what do you get? You get something. Okay, so basically, this routine case look, you add these three and you get 3k squared plus 2, and a plus b plus c is this, and you subtract, and you basically get a value for you get 3 square k squared by 2 plus by 2. You get 3k squared by 2 plus 1, and you still get ABC, but this k squared by 2 is only an integer if k is even. So make this more general and put like you need to be more specific in this case, and put, say, k equals oh god, I didn't scroll down, right? K equals like 2m. Then all three ABC will be integers, right? These three will be integers. And then you have some general ABC in terms of a parameter m. And you just need to make sure. And so if we solve this, what do we get? So we substitute this. Guys, please do try to solve this accordingly.
Shall I tell what it comes to? It saves time.
Just give me a minute. Yeah. What did you get?
A equal to k square by 2 plus 1.
K
equal
square?
to
I think it should come m square plus something.
oh, like you are putting b plus c as m square, right? Oh, okay, k as 2m.
Yeah.
Oh, I think we put different variables there. So I will just take it once then.
Yeah, I think we get a is equal to 2m square minus 4m. B is equal to 2m square plus 1, and c is equal to 2m square plus.
Yes, yeah, okay, yeah.
Oh, I didn't. Right. So this sort of comes out, and we need to show that these three numbers exist in the range. B exists in the middle, so we need to show that there exists an m such that a is greater than n, and c is lesser than n, 2n. And this you can put in terms of m, and this you can put in terms c, you can put in terms of m. And after this, it's just solving the two inequalities you get. Right? You get inequality in terms of one inequality in terms of m and n that gives a lower bound and an upper bound, and you solve these two questions and you show that such an m always exists for n greater than or equal to 100. Like after this, there is probably one a small piece of step that can be considered non-routine, but you guys should be able to get it. And that's really a lot of details which I really don't want to get into. Right? So that's how you solve the question, right? So there are many questions in which the end can be unsatisfying because of details, but yeah, this one is one of them. So I think right, I just want to sum up what we did. So one of the main things about this question was that one of the main things about this question is the lesson that you should feel free to get rid of some parts of the question. For example, what we did, all our conditions were not if and only if. They were only if. Like our condition that saying that there are always three numbers such that any two of them are squares, that is not actually implied by this question, right? The question doesn't actually imply this. Yeah, Man, you can talk.
So I don't know about that particularly, but is that pigeonhole related to pigeonhole principle? I have read that some
Yeah, this
read
is
so
directly pigeonhole. Like our inspiration, like I didn't say it out loud because pigeonhole is generally just
yes
common
yes
sense,
yes
but
yes yes.
like calling it pigeonhole without explicitly using it, like this pigeon. I wouldn't actually call out pigeonhole here, because what we're basically saying, the statement we used here was, if you have three numbers and you divide these into two sets, at least one of the set will have two of these problems. That's pigeonhole. Like you can say that's pigeonhole, but
Okay, yes. Okay,
that's
okay.
that's more common sense than an explicit form of pigeonhole, in some sense. Right. So yeah, the lesson I want to say is that the three numbers thing is not actually implied by this question. This statement doesn't imply that needs to be true. It's only the other way around. So make sure you always try to make the problem a little add in the more conditions, that might or might not be true, because sometimes when we add in conditions, then the problem can become simpler. Like, by adding in the condition that, and the the 3 number condition, we completely lost the thing to have 2 piles. And in this case, actually, the 2 piles thing is pretty seeable through. Like, you know many of you might actually also have seen it. If people are saying, you may be, this is actually a pretty dead giveaway. You're dividing into 2 piles, and they're asking you that in one of the pile you have 2 numbers such as sums of the squares. You're able to find 2 numbers in one of the things. It's sort of a given that you can tell the 3 things. Most experienced contestants will be able to tell it quite quickly. So that's one thing you need to look for. And we did that again. When we said the 3 squares, a plus b plus c, and c plus a have to be something really specific. We made the problem more specific again. It actually might not have been true. Like, you might not have always been able to find 3 continuous squares. But we can actually show that this is true nevertheless. And it's actually easier to show this true nevertheless. The thing is that, when you have too many degrees of freedom, too much freedom, it sort of becomes harder to do stuff. Like, we can make our problem simpler by adding in more conditions, which actually makes a good amount of sense, Right. I actually didn't check that, but if you solve the inequalities, as Pranav was saying, 100, right? So yeah, I initially hinted, that there was some significance to 100, and the thing is that it's you even in greater than equal to 98 works, but not 97 and such, right?
Yeah.
So you can get this by solving the inequalities. Yeah. So guys, yeah, okay, that took longer than I expected. Anyway, yeah. Anyway, guys, yeah, I'll give you 1 or 2 minutes, maybe until 7:45 to, read this question. I think most of you read it, so I'll just give like maximum 1 minute. Most of you would have seen the IMO problems at some point.
Can we do like 2015 problem 1 first?
No, we'll just do this question.
Like, I don't want to risk it.
Yes.
I mean, like, I did promise. Okay, guys, has every, like, I'll guys, does anybody not want to do also not want to do IMO 2021 P5 line? Like, does anybody want to do like this year's P5? Does anybody want to do it?
Actually, we can do, but it's very complicated and it's very
It's
thinkable.
not
So
complicated.
we
It's
can,
not complicated. You know what?
but
I'll actually do this pretty quickly. It's actually, I think it'll take less time than this. I think I
okay.
should be able
So
to solve it
let's take
somewhat
it.
quickly.
So let's take it. So let's take
Yeah.
P5 first.
Oh, can you tell
Thereby, I'll
expected
solve it
time? I
pretty
don't
quickly.
wanna. No.
It
Can you
shouldn't
tell
take
the
more than,
ideal time?
I think
Yeah.
it shouldn't take more than 15-20 minutes.
Sure.
Okay.
It's actually not. I think it's a pretty nice problem, and yeah, I'm doing P5, and then I'll do it quicker than I normally would, because many of you people have to seem to have looked at it, so and seen the solution, so, or solved it. I'm not really sure. So many people might have solved it already. So I'll just do this somewhat quickly. So to explain the question, you have oh God, not again. It's syncing. 1 second. The solution is hard. Like, Imran, it is a hard question. Like, the fact that the solution is short doesn't mean that the problem is not hard. Like, there are really hard problems which have a couple solutions that have a couple of lines. Notice this, and it's done. What do you mean the statement of the problems? I'm not sure what you mean. Like, you look at the solution and you think it's easy. That happens a lot. You look at the solutions and you you think the problem is easy, but um, that's really not true. You have to really try the question to actually feel the actual difficulty of the question. So anyway, yeah, what I was saying, my iPad sort of yeah, it's loading. I'll write in ugly tones in this here as well, using the laptop mouse. Um, so you have some sort of order of numbers. You arrange them randomly, and you have 2021 numbers, and you arrange them randomly in a circle. And what you do is you start with one, and then you exchange the numbers of one. The two numbers, maybe this 8. Um, you exchange 2 and 8, and then you find wherever 2 is in the circle, and then you interchange the neighbors of 2, and then you go to 3, you interchange the neighbors of 3, and you go to 4, and so on, and you do that till 2021. And the question alludes that at some point, say in general, say you're refreshing the kth one, you're interchanging the neighbors of the kth one. Right. Oh yeah, never mind. So you're interchanging the neighbors of the kth one, um, which probably means that like say the 100th one, then they say that at least in one of these k, the two numbers you interchanged, like the two numbers on either side, one has to be lesser and one has to be greater. It can't be that in each and every move, um, both the sides are either greater than the number or smaller than the number, right? And okay, so that's the question. And the actually, as to be honest, this is a somewhat harder problem to motivate, like, because the solution feels somewhat short when you look at it, but what do we really do here, right? This, like, one of those problems where it feels like one of those problems where you try to find an invariant, or you try to find some sort of quantity or an algorithm. In general, you're trying to find some sort of construction, maybe, and try to show it works. What I'm saying is really vague, but yeah, that was a really vague statement. So what do we do here? So the idea is that you so what do we want to do? Say you have mm, right, say you have k, right, some random k, and on this side and this side, right, what we want to show. Oops, yeah. So what we want to show is that what we want to show is that both are either, like, let's assume that both on, like, when we come to the kth move, that is, both sides of the number are either greater or lesser than this, right? Both sides of the number are either greater or lesser than k. And one important idea you can get is that if both sides are lesser than k, then you have already sort of moved those numbers, right? If both sides are lesser than k, you have already sort of moved those numbers, like you have touched them. And if both sides are not greater than k, you have not touched any of them. So maybe if you keep track of what you have already touched, by touched I mean, okay, wait, that was a bad term. So to repeat, if both sides are lesser than k, then both of these numbers are numbers which you have done a move on, like you have exchanged the sides of those moves. So if you keep a track of all those numbers which you exchange about, and basically that's all numbers lesser than k, then both of these numbers are going to be included, or both of those numbers are not going to be included. Okay, remember, we're assuming contradiction, and that this is not, that the statement is not true. Yeah, that's what contradiction is. um okay, so what the contradiction exactly is that you'll never be able to find a number such that one is lesser and one is greater, right? So what does this mean? So maybe we can keep track of we can sort of keep track about what numbers are being exchanged and what numbers are not being exchanged. Like, okay, let me rephrase my last sentence, please. I take it back. Let's just, sort of mark or color any number which we exchange around. So at the kth move, color the kth thing and exchange the things, right? So what happens? So let's say we, call a number, what do we call it? Good, whatever, good. Yeah. So we call the number good if we have exchanged around it. So, after the first move, 1 is a good number. After the second move, 2 is a good number, and so on. And we need to show that, all other numbers are bad. So we need to show that, all numbers are either, like, if at the kth move, both sides of the things are either good or either bad. We haven't done much, but it is an important change in perspective, I think, which is important. When people are solving questions, um, I think they don't look for changes in perspective, rephrasing the problem. Sometimes you don't feel like doing, you don't concretely look like you're doing progress, but you're actually doing progress by going, like, problems can be like a wall, you can't go down, sometimes you need to go that and that. Okay, that was a stupid, okay, never mind. Right, that was a stupid metaphor. um so here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna mark 1 as good, right? And I just told you what I'm gonna do. Then mark 2 as good and exchange the things around 2. Keep doing that. So what's gonna happen? So what can we look at? So let's look at this. Let's take the two cases. One is where both sides are good and one is where both sides are bad. So let's take at the kth move. So let's say if both sides are good, then the three things are going to be good, bad, good, where the bad is the k one. And after the exchange, it's going to go good, 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 because the bad one becomes a good one, right?
Yeah.
Right. So yeah, or it could go from bad, bad, bad to bad, good, bad. Right? So it goes from this to this. Okay, so first thing you need to notice is that these two are this, like, like the opposite ends are the same, right? Now I want to look for something here that can help me, right? For example, I look at the number of places in which, to be honest, I think I can probably motivate this a little more, but we'll just do this quickly. And what we actually notice is that, if we look at this thing, there's a bad good pair that's turning into a good good pair, right? So the number of bad good pairs is decreasing, but it's increasing here. So that's not actually helping us, right? So the number of good bad pairs is increasing here and decreasing here. So if it's not really helping us. If something can increase and it can decrease, it's probably not useful. The number of good pairs increases here, and then there are no good pairs created here, right? So the number of good pairs increases by 2 here, but there are none of them created. The number of bad pairs, on the other hand, gives something interesting, right? Here there are 0 bad pairs. There are no bad pairs, and here there are none as well. So there's no change. Here they're actually decreasing. The number of bad pairs are actually, decreasing, right? So, both of these are really interesting. For example, the good pairs can only increase, while the bad pairs can only decrease. And what do I mean by this? Look at the number of good pairs at the beginning. At the end, it can only have increased. So if it has decreased, then we have a problem. We do the same for bad pairs, right? And actually, this actually ends up finishing the problem, right? This ends up finishing the problem because initially, initially you have in some random order, and all of them are bad because you haven't actually touched any of them. So the number of bad, so let's look at good because they're good. So the number of good pairs is 0 because there are all of the numbers are bad, and the number of good pairs is, wait, what am I saying? Uh, right, yeah. So the number of good pairs is 0, and in the end it goes to 2021. Now good pairs can increase, but as we've seen, they can only increase by 2. Yeah, I just finished P5, right? So this finishes the problem because they can only increase by 2, so you can never go from 0. Like I hope what you understood what I meant when I said that the initial is 0, because you have not touched any of them, so all the numbers are bad. So you have 0 good pairs, but at the end when you finish, all of them are good. So all continuous pairs. Like if you count the whole thing, all continuous um, pairs are good. So this goes from 0 to 2021, and this can't, because it can either increase by 2 or remain the same. So just to quickly recap the solution, because I might have been unclear in the process, is that we do this thing where we sort of at each step, initially all of them are bad, and at each step, at the kth move, we make the kth number, or walnut in this case, from bad to good, right? We make it from bad to good. And we showed that like since in each move, like after we exchange the two sides, we're making the bad to good. So it either can go GBG, like good bad good, to good good good, or bad 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 to bad good bad, right? Because we're assuming both sides are either greater or lesser. So if both sides are lesser, then both sides have been already, the move has been done on them, so they're both good. And if both sides are greater, then both sides have been done already. Like both sides are yet to happen, like the moves are yet to happen if they're greater, so they're both bad. So this goes to bad good bad, and this goes to good bad, because obviously center one goes from bad to good, and you're just exchanging the end ones. And you notice, for instance, that the number of good pairs, if this is the case, increases by 2, while in this case, the second case, there are no good pairs being formed that were probably already there in the elsewhere. But here there are no good pairs being formed. Here there are 2 new good pairs being formed, right? This 2 is the change. And now we just have to look in the initial and final conditions. Initially, like, all the numbers were bad because you haven't done any move. So all the numbers are bad, there's no good to find anywhere, so obviously you have 0 good pairs. While in the end, all the numbers are good, you have done a move on every one of them. So the number of consecutive pairs is the number of good ones, and you have 2021 consecutive pairs because you have the number of walnuts is 2021, and any 2 continuous ones are done. And so the number of good pairs has increased from 0 to 2021, but you can only increase them by 2 every time. So did everybody understand this question? Does anybody have any questions at all? Anything to ask?
Actually, the last step in which you have said that the zero to it moves from 0 to 2021. I just don't understand that step only.
Right.
Can you
So
please?
just count the number of good pairs. Right. So initially
Yes.
there are 0 good pairs. Do you agree with this?
Yes.
In the end, there are 2021 good pairs. Do you agree with this as well?
Yes. Yes.
Right? So the
Yeah.
number of good pairs has increased by 2021, and we saw that there are only 2 moves possible. And in this move, right, this move, the number of good pairs increases by 2, and in this move it changes by 0. So you can only add an even number 2 at every step, but you can't go from 0 to 2021 by adding 2, right?
Yes. Yes.
So
We
you got
can't.
that? Yeah. So that's a
Yes, I
contradiction.
got. Okay, that's a contradiction. Okay, so we have proved it by contradiction.
Yes. Yes. Right.
Okay,
That's a
clear.
contradiction.
Thank you. Yes.
Yes. So hopefully everybody understood what happened in that question. I went a little quick for my taste, but we can go on to the next question now. So do you guys want to solve this IMO 2015 one, which is also a construction oriented problem? Do you want to solve this pretty nice, quite nice HMMT problem? I like this problem, or this graph theory problem, which is nice as well. So do you want me to solve 4, 5, or 6? Do you want to do 4, 5, or 6? Yes, we're done with 2021 P5.
Maybe 5. If anyone has other opinions.
We can do 5. Anybody else? Anybody else have any preference? There's a graph theory problem. The question 4, I just have a preference for not doing it. It's quite a nice problem because it's a very nice problem, but it's heavily construction oriented. It's sort of something you figure out, and that's bad for solves. Bad for a class, to be honest. I just put it there because it's a nice problem. Same goes for actually question 3. It's actually a very nice problem. It's something I'd love to do. Maybe you can take if I take a probability class someday, but probability session someday. But many people might not be familiar with that problem, right? So you can try it if you have some idea of how to use expected value and stuff. I just put it there for that sake. People might not have seen it, but yeah. So do you guys want to do 5 or 6 at this point? You to be honest, example 4 is a construction based problem. It's sort of might be hard. It's just tried cases, and it might get really boring to listen to.
No, 6 is what kind of problem? Like, is it graph theory?
Yeah, it's a graph theory problem.
And 5 also.
5 is not a graph theory problem.
We
5
can
is
do 6 rather than.
Okay, right. So
Let's
more
do
people
6.
more people seem to want to do 6. So 6 it is, right? We'll go back to 5 if we have the time. So yeah, guys, you can. I'll just give you one more minute to read the 6th problem. I'll be back in like 30 seconds. Just read this problem.
Abhizar?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
Oh,
was just-
isn't this like a fake, like just 2k plus 1 seat is something? Like, as Russian problems usually are.
Okay. Can you repeat what you said? I didn't
Uh,
understand.
Like 1001, so 2k plus 1 cities with k roads beginning and k roads ending. Like, is it kind of that fake, or 1001 is a specific number?
Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty. Yeah, that's what that number is supposed to mean. The 668 is less clear, I think.
So
I mean, it's pretty
basically,
clear that
that's
that's what
how
it
K
is.
you
plus
do.
k plus 3, no?
I mean, every road is the 500 and 500 are have to come out, because what they're basically saying, in other words, is you have every city connected to every city. So every city has 1,000 roads, right? That follows by definition. And they're then saying that that 1,000 is split evenly, 500 and 500, between going and coming. Okay, this problem has a less chance that some of you might have. actually solved it. I hope everybody read the question though. I mean, even if you haven't, like, I hope you can always access the drive. I mean, you can always access the handout on the drive, the handout on the Discord server. So right, so I'll just briefly, revise what this question is actually trying to say. So this is a graph theory problem, and it doesn't. I mean, for anybody who is not at all comfortable with graph theory, to be honest, there's nothing actually in graph theory. Maybe one or two results, but we won't be using any special graph theory results as such. It's just that the structure of the problem is graph theoretic. So the structure of the problem, it is just framed in that way, and basically we can sort of, yeah. So we can have many cities like that, and every one of them is connected to every other one of them, but the road is one way. So you can go from here to here. Yeah, don't worry about it. There's no
So digraphs,
yeah. Wait, I actually don't know what digraphs mean.
directed graphs.
Oh, right. Yeah, it's a directed graph. Right. It's a complete directed graph, as a matter of fact, right? Because everything is
Tournament.
connected. You have that. Whatever. It'll become too messy if we even try to remotely draw all the points. But yeah. So, and actually, one point I want to note, something you can probably think of is that the labelings of the city don't actually matter, right? Because they're asking you to prove that if you choose any 668 points, this should work. So basically, you're supposed to be able to show this for any 668 points. So the labeling of which city is which doesn't matter. And when all the vertices, cities have become vertices. So what I'm basically doing is I'm representing every city by a vertex and connecting two cities with a arrow. Every two cities with the arrow pointed in the direction where the road goes. And up, a road. Say I can, I can go like that from this city to this city. Um, and I think that you should be able to, if if you're not very comfortable, you can try to prove that even it's a very easy thing to do, that even with with 1001 vertices, you should be able to reach from any city to any city. It's very easy, if it's very easy. Is that definitely true? Yeah, it's definitely true. It's super simple to prove. Okay, I'll just show this. Basically take a city, you know, and it has 500. Say you want to find a path from this city to this city, you know. So let's say the path from this to this is this. Otherwise, you could just follow the path, and then consider the 500 edges which this goes from this to this, and consider the 500 edges that go from other cities to this city. And this called set A and B, and we want to show that A and B have an intersection. But this has to be true, because if this is 500,
The fact that every tournament has an Hamiltonian path helps, I guess.
yeah, or that's a stronger result actually. So you could go search this up. Even in the last graph theory class I proved this. It's what a Hamilton, every tournament, this called it every tournament has a Hamiltonian path, right? That's a stronger result. Here I'm just saying that there is a path from any vertex to any other vertex, and this is much easier to prove. You could just say that this vertex is, see, there's one vertex here, there's 500 vertices here, and one here. If you assume the A and B are disjoint, then you add these numbers up and you get 1002, which is a contradiction. So one of these two, A and B, must intersect.
Are we done with the problem?
It's like
No. I was just proving something that's not this, right?
Okay, so like basically we proved that from any one city we can go to any other city in 3 moves, kind of.
But no, that's only in the original. That's only in
Yeah,
a
in the
graph with
1000.
1001 vertices, not the graph with 668 vertices.
Yeah, I was just confirming.
Yeah, not in that graph. Like we haven't shown in that graph, right? So now let's actually see what they're trying to say. They're saying that we choose any 668 of these cities, and we should be able to go from anywhere to anywhere without going outside these 668 cities. So, oh yeah. So before I get to that, what I was trying to say before was that the sort of a fixed structure, the like the original graph with 1001 vertices and the 500 connections, it's sort of fixed thing. You can't change it. It's a very rigid structure that they defined, right? There's no degrees of freedom to move there. It's not. It's
Like 668 is not random.
no, that's not what I'm talking about. What I'm trying to say is that um, how do I say this? Like what I'm saying right now is not important. So even if you don't understand, that's not an issue. But uh, like say maybe you're given a 4-graph structure that looks like that. You're asked to prove something about this, and the idea is that this structure is properly defined. Like there's no changing the structure. It's a proper thing that where we can define every vertex and to every vertex. Right? Okay, you know what? Don't worry about what I said. It's a really vague thing and it's actually not that useful. Um, okay, so what the problem statement says is that out of the 1000 thing, we choose 668 vertices and we leave the rest, how many ever. And we should be able to go from anywhere to anywhere in this thing through some path, right? You might not be able to go directly, but through some path. And one thing that should come into your mind is that what exactly does the original problem play a role here, right? Yeah, but that's actually a good piece of intuition, guys. Like, what is 688 million? It's somewhat 2 by third of 1001. It's around that number, and that might actually be helpful in some scenarios. So we'll keep that in mind and see if that's useful. Try to see if something like that is useful. But guys, be careful of using numbers like that. Sometimes it's a trick. Sometimes you should keep that in mind. But again, you have lots of time in an Olympiad to experiment, so that's okay.
I know, like that 2 by 3 looks more fascinating because the result which you just proved, it shows that 3 moves we can go to any city. So like just by 3, there's a same. That's what I typed.
Right.
Like it might not be helpful, but like I think so.
Yeah, sure. We can keep that in mind. That's a nice thought. I hadn't thought about that. Yeah, but when thinking about this, one of the things I think is, why couldn't they have defined this problem directly? Like, what is this getting from the original thing, right? And upon thinking this question, what this is getting from the graph with 1001 vertices, this has 668 vertices, and we're asked to prove something about this itself. The question statement tells us nothing about the procedure and the 1001 thing. So, what is the question getting from the original graph? And the answer is, on 1 second of thought, is the 500 condition. That like a graph even here cannot have 500 more than 500, I think. So we can reframe the question again. We can reframe the question. Sorry, I had a cough there. Yeah. We can reframe the question in this way. Say you have 668 vertices where 668 cities where you have a road from any one vertex to any other vertex in one direction, and you add in the we have a one direction road, that is, and you add in the condition that you can't have more than 500 roads going in or out, and you don't even need the original 1001 condition graph. That's what gives me the intuition that Pranav, that the original thing might not be helpful. Like they might have only defined it that way for making it more elegant. But we already have a new formulation, right? Basically, take any graph on 668 vertices, a directed graph on 668 vertices where you connect any 2 points with an arrow, every 2 points with an arrow, and add in the condition you call it a model, yeah. Um, 500. No, this 500 cases bash. No, I mean, if you really want a case bash, the number of cases is going to be way greater, I think.
Yeah, like I just saw that and I was like, if you can't do anything, you can do it in the remaining time.
You
if
won't be able to. The number of cases is too much. It's not 500. It's way more than 500.
Oh, I am considering like take any vertex P1 and the number of vertices going out from that, like something like that.
Oh, then you have to you will have to prove a problem on 667 vertices. No, wait. Okay, right. Something like what you said might be true, but I'm not fully sure. 500 is nevertheless
Yeah.
very large. You won't be able to solve for 500 in the exam, I think. In any exam, for that matter. Okay, so let's try to get on with this. And in this question, they're asking us to prove that you can go from any one city to any other city. You should think about. Let me try to phrase this in a better way. Right. So they're giving you a condition, right? They're asking you to prove something, that you should be able to go from any other city to any other city, from one city to any other. You should be able to go from one city to any other city. But the thing is that we can't actually use that right now. So whenever you want to solve a question, it's often helpful to it's often to be able to it's helpful to be able to sort of use that condition, use every condition you can. And that's what I was talking about before as well. Make your own conditions. The problem might not be true, but it might also be true. Proving something more specific and general can help you prove something more specific, can help you prove the problem. So to that extent, so how can we convert? So how can we make this problem of going from being able to go from one point to any other? That's what they're asking us to prove. So can we make this condition into the problem somehow? And when I solved this problem, I had one that question freshly in my mind, so it came a little more directly. The question I'm talking about is there's this question that says there are 4951 points and something like that. And what you do is you choose as many points as possible and do that. So no worry if you're not seeing that, but what I'm saying you can do is this, right? So you want to be able to choose as many you want to make that condition into the problem, sort of get that condition into the problem. I mean, okay, I'm repeating myself here, but let's see how to phrase this. You want to be able to somehow right, even I'm sort of trying to think of how to frame this. Right? Okay, yeah. So you want to make it true. You want to make the problem statement true without actually making it true. And what exactly I mean here is, assume that for a few points, what this problem statement is true, that you can go from any other point to any other point. And this, if you have this, you can sort of you have an extra condition on this that you can use, right? And this inspires us to make to choose as many points as possible such that the problem statement is true, right? Choose the maximum number of points, and you want to show that the maximum number of points is 668. But let's say you choose as many points as possible, such that you can go from any other point till this to any other point. Right? From any point in this set to any other point. And all of a sudden, and this is a greedy algorithm, right? And this is like the power of a greedy algorithm, because, the power comes from the fact that, from the following argument, take any other point. Now, can you have an arrow that goes from this point this way? Can you have something like this? And the answer is no, because, if you can have this, you can then reach from any other point to this point first. Like you can go from any other point to this point first, and then you can go from this point to this point. And so this point is definitely part of the set. So, maximality is proven false. So that's what tells us that if you have to divide it into so you now have two sets. The first set is the one which you have chosen the maximum number of points with. Oh, if anybody is unclear about what I'm trying to say at any point, please stop me. I was really fumbling on trying to how to explain the greedy algorithm idea, but I can repeat that if anybody else wants me to. And this other set is the one which supposedly you can't reach from any point till this. This means that any point here, right? Any point in this set has arrows that go only away when we're looking at this set. Right. So I'll repeat the greedy algorithm. What I'm saying is that they're sort of giving you a condition that saying that you should be able to reach from one point to any other point. I'll repeat it nevertheless quickly. You should be able to reach from one point to any other point. And, if you can reach from one point to any other point, that's a really useful condition to have. So maybe you could, say assume for a given set that you can go from any other point to any other point. And, it probably feels easier to, show by contradiction or something like that this set is the whole set. Like you can't prove contradiction on this problem currently. Like, directly you can't prove. So that's another way you can motivate this thing. You can't prove contradiction directly. Because, they're asking you to they're asking you to show that you can, oh wait, you can't prove contradiction, but it sort of becomes harder to, look at after that. They're basically asking you to show that you can go from one point to any other point, right? So let me go from that way and show how we can motivate the greedy algorithm using contradiction directly. So I just realized that as well. So the idea is that you can assume contradiction, that you can't go from any there is one point in the thing that you can't reach. There's one point that you won't be able to reach. And that motivates you. You have maybe, or maybe not one, maybe you have a couple of points that you can't reach. Then in every other point, you can go from every other point to every other point. So that motivates you, again to the same thing. This is actually a better motivation. Assume contradiction, and you get this. And what the idea is that you choose the maximum number of points, such that you can go from one point to any other point in that set. And now if you consider a point not in that set, and consider the arrows from that point to the points in this set, call the set A and the other one B, the rest of the points B, then points of this set to the set A, then all of them must go in this direction, must go from that point to A. I hope people got this. Because otherwise you will be able to reach from A to B. Contradiction will be, I think. And you'll notice that there's a lot of arrows. Like, if all the arrows go from B to A, then there's a lot of arrows. So, you can maybe try to tile the 500 condition. And let's say you have A points here and B points here. And the number of outgoing arrows from, say, this point to A is A. Right? And how many arrows can we add that go from B in this point to, still outwards? We want to maximize this. And how do we do that, right? And you can see that the total number of arrows in B is B into B
Uh,
minus 1 by 2. Yeah, go on, go on.
I just want to confirm one thing, that the all the outward arrows going in, suppose a element small b in capital B are going to a element small in capital A, right?
Oh no, no, the no. What A and B are A is the number of elements in set A and B is the number of elements in set B. But yeah, if you take any vertex B in any vertex in A, the arrow has to go from the B1 to the A1.
Okay. And also, like, suppose x and y are two elements in B, only B.
Hmm.
Then x and y are not connected by a directed segment, no?
They are
Or,
connected. Any 2 points are connected. No,
oh, okay, okay. Yeah.
right? Yeah. Uh, so you have B into B minus 1 two vertices, like edges only inside B, and right, and I basically want to find out at least the minimum number of like how many outgoing vertices some vertex in B can have, at most, like at most uh the thing is that the maximum number of vertices that is number in B can have is at least the average of this number. Okay, let me just explain what I mean by this. Look, if you look at the total number of edges in B, it's B into B minus 1 by 2. This is obvious because you can choose and you have B choices for the first one and B choice for the second. And if you look at only outgoing vertices, right? If you look at only outgoing vertices, um, right? So let's say the outgoing the number of outgoing vertices for the first vertex is say V1, and the second one is V2, and the third one is V3, and so on till VB. And this is so you sum this up. This is B into B minus 1 by 2 because we're summing the edges. This should be somewhat obvious. So B into B minus 1 by 2, right? And the greatest of these, you know, the the greatest of these is at least greater than the average of the number. Obviously, the greatest the greatest of a set is greater than the average of the number. So the greatest of the set will be greater than the average, and there are B numbers there. So the greatest of these is greater than this. So at least one of these Vi is greater than it's at least B minus 1 by 2, right? So okay, so why am I doing this? I basically want to find the total number of outgoing vertices out that some vertex in B will at least have, because I want to connect it that it can't be more than 500, right? And the thing is that every vertex in B will have at least A plus at least some vertex will have B minus 1 by 2. So some vertex in B will have this many outgoing vertices, right? And this has to be lesser than 500. Okay, so I hope everybody understood this. But it's again, you have two inequalities and one thing. And only one inequality. You have two. Oops, I didn't scroll. You have two inequalities and only one. You have two variables and only one inequality. But one thing you'll notice is that just like how one vertex for B has so many, the intuition is that one vertex for B has so many outgoing that we can make it contradict the 500 thing somehow. Any vertex in A has so many incoming, because everything from B comes into it. We can do the same thing with the A vertices. And as a matter of fact, if we are now going to look at the incoming vertices, because A has lots of incoming vertices. So the number of incoming vertices is for A1 is at least B for these things. And we can do the same thing we did for this to show that some vertex has at least A minus 1 by 2 incoming vertices. And this is also greater than or equal to 500. You know, oops, I didn't again scroll. Yeah. And did everybody get this? I mean, I think I might not be able to. I might not be actually reaching some of you. Okay. Um. Right. So, and now we remember that A plus B is actually 668. Right. I mean, you should always have. I mean, I should have mentioned this earlier, and you should have always. Uh. Oh God, it's sinking again. Give it like 10 seconds. Right. So you know A plus B is 668. So can anybody guess? Like it's somewhat obvious what you do right now, but can anybody guess what to do right now? Anyone? I'm still audible, right? Awesome, yeah. You know what? I'll just use my mouse again. Right. So A plus B is 668. You know, you'll notice pretty mainly. It's a pretty easy hint that if you just add these two inequalities, you get 3 into A plus B by 2 minus 1, right? And 3 into A plus B by 2 is 3 by 2 into 668 will give you something. Is that greater than 1001 or lesser than 1001?
Slightly lesser than. No, greater than.
Greater, right? It comes 1002. Yeah.
Like it is 668. Wait. 668 into 2 by 3 you are asking, no?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that is a bit greater than 1001.
Yeah, I think it'll be 600 and I think it'll be 1002.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, it'll be 1002, right? And so you subtract the minus half, the left hand side will come up to 1001, but the right hand side is 500 plus 500, and that's just 1000, right? And that's a contradiction. So we're done. Um, did everybody understand this? Look, just to repeat the motivations for doing what I did, the greedy algorithm is, it'll actually come with a little practice in greedy algorithms. Like, try one or two problems, you learn to get the hints. And, it's a pretty neat trick. Greedy algorithms are a pretty neat trick to impose conditions on a problem, especially in a graph theoretic problem or when you have discrete objects. Greedy algorithms can be used to impose conditions. And in this case, you assuming contradiction, uh, yeah, I'll summarize. So what we basically did here was we we sort of found a set A. That is, we define the set A in such a way. We say choose the maximum number of points you can. Choose the maximum number of points you can. Choose the maximum number of points you can, such that we call this set A, or any two of these points are connected. Like you can go from any two of these points. You have a path between any two. And what's the use of this? The other set B, the other set B, right? Like the complement will give you pretty blatant arrows, because any arrow from B to A has to go in only one direction. It can only go from B to A. And when you look at this, you look at this and say, you remember the condition. You remember the 500 condition that you can't have more than 500 incoming or outgoing arrows. And you sort of look at, oh, wait, arrows are only going from B outwards. So there must be a pretty large number of arrows going. So maybe we can, write down an inequality that will actually help us there. And we actually do that. No, we sum up the number of outgoing arrows from B to A and B to B. Right. So the number of B to A is A, and the number of going from B to B itself will be at least B minus 1 by 2 for some vertex. So for some vertex, this is true. So it's generally true. A plus B minus 1 is less than 500. And we do the same with A, with the intuition that, it has so many incoming vertices that something must be false. So something must be false. And we have these two inequalities, and looking at these two inequalities, it's somewhat a dead giveaway to add them up because a plus b is 668, and we're done. And we're done because it's a contradiction. Okay. Was that okay? Did you guys get it? Yeah. Right. So I think we're 5 minutes past time already. So yeah, I think we should end the class right now. I'll just stop recording. Does